Welcome to Nova Southeastern University College of Psychology Shark Chats. Today's feature is Change Maker Careers: Impact on the Child Mental Health Crisis.
And we're going to go right to Dr. Cassie. Naomi.
Yes. So Dr. Irina Cassie is director of the specialist program in school psychology at NSU. She's a licensed psychologist and a nationally certified school psychologist. So please welcome Dr. Cassie.
Good afternoon, Naomi. Thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be here today, and I'm excited to be part of the conversation about careers in mental health that support children. And I want to start our panel discussion by telling a story from my career, actually. And even though it's a story of a young adult, his story really started in his childhood. So this story is actually from the time when I worked in a private practice. And one day, this young man came into the practice through the doors and said, "I need an evaluation." And he really had difficult time explaining why. We kind of agreed on the fact that he wanted to be a football player. And as the conversation went on, I learned that he was accepted in the university to on a football scholarship, but because he struggled academically significantly, he was put on probation and then later had to leave the team. And so he was determined to get back on the team. He talked how much he's passionate about the football, and it's his lifelong dream is to be a professional football player. And I have to say that when he first came through the door, there was a sense of this hopefulness about him. He really was determined to work hard towards the goal. But at the same time, there was something about him that I couldn't quite understand or couldn't quite describe. You know, as much as he was hopeful, he was also helpless in some sense, and even a bit sad, I would say, or even maybe in despair. I couldn't quite describe what was going on. I knew something was not quite right. And so we started working with him. We developed a plan on how we're going to go about evaluation, because he was concerned he might have a learning disability. And, you know, the purpose of the evaluation would be to get him some supports and some accommodations so he can do better on his college courses. And back in the day, the place where I worked, we usually met with the client for an initial interview. Then we had 2 or 3 evaluation sessions, depending on how much work we needed to do, and then meet one more time for feedback and give them a copy of their psychological report and recommendations that they can take to different agencies where they need to go to get the supports. So when I started working with this individual, it became clear that we probably will have to spend more than 2 sessions. And what happened is that he worked really slow. You know, he was probably one of the hardest working individuals I've ever worked with. He never gave up. I never heard from him, "I don't know the answer." Every question that you ask him, he really tried to do his best to answer it. He tried to problem solve. He tried to guess. You could see the effort he was putting into answering every question. But of course, it slowed him down. And so we ended up spending probably, don't remember exactly. I would say probably close to 12 evaluation sessions. They were short because he couldn't work for longer periods of time, but we got to know each other quite well because I pretty much saw him almost on a weekly basis for a short period of time. And when I first interviewed him, as school psychologists, we usually go through the background information, tell me about yourself, tell me about your upbringing. And he shared a story of a typical boy. He grew up in a small town. He went to a public school. His grades were low, but he never really got supports, neither at school or at home. Nothing really stood out from his story as he told it to me the first time. And so we were about to wrap up the evaluation, to answer his question whether he has a learning disability. And I still felt like something is not quite there. However, that's all I had. That's all he shared with me. But on the last day of evaluation, and he was, by the way, super polite. He always called me ma'am. And he said, ma'am, I need to tell you something. And I knew something is big is coming up because he was definitely on a quieter side. He was very polite, but very quiet. And he said, I need to share something with you. And instead of saying, he actually rolled up his sleeves and he showed his arms had cuts all over. And the cuts were, some of them were fresh. You could tell that they probably happened just within a few days. Some were healing and some were scars, probably from months or maybe even years ago. And so I said, tell me more. Tell me more about your story. And he opened up that he has lived through years of childhood abuse. He grew up in a home where physical punishment was very frequent. And between that and some of the stories he said of emotional abuse, he really struggled as an adult to cope with it. He really saw the world as an unsafe place, and he couldn't name a single person who was there to support him, who had his back. And of course, long story short, that night, this individual went into a hospital to get help. And when he came out, he got enough of supports to help him process some of the trauma that he lived with. We were able to finish his evaluation. And through few contacts that I had with him, I knew that he got accommodations for his college courses and his grades were going up. After maybe 6 months to a year, his GPA didn't go up significant enough for him to join the football team, but I know he was on a good path and I knew that he was getting the supports that he needed to get. But that story didn't end there. I was watching a TV one day, and it was probably 4 or 5 years after I finished my work with this individual. And here he comes on the TV. And a local TV station did a story on this guy who was working as a football team assistant for the local university team. And he told his story. He said how much he dreamt about being a football player, and then he never made it. And he realized that, he can live his life and he can live his dream in different capacities. And so he was so passionate about, doing the work of a team assistant and working with the team players and working with the coaches. And you could see his face shine. It was not that scared and helpless boy that I've seen when I worked with him. It was a grown man that truly found his strength and his passion. And the beauty of it too was that his coaches and the team members were interviewed, and they all talked so highly about him. He really integrated into the team and really, become heart and soul of that team, the way others were talking about. And I tell the story. It's a young adult, right? I got to work with him as a young adult. But we all know how childhood experiences are important. They really shape who we are, what personality we develop, how we cope with life. And so this is why I think I chose the career of school psychology, because I can be a voice and I can be support for the kids when they are going through hardships. It doesn't have to be abuse, but whether it's an academic deficit that they're struggling with, or maybe anxiety that they are learning how to cope with, or maybe excessive sadness that they're dealing with. As school psychologists, we can be there for the kids. And not every client with a C will have a significant impact on them or change their life as much as I think my interactions with these individuals were. But I think we can make at least their day a little bit better and their life a little bit better by helping them understand themselves and giving them skills just to deal with life, whatever it is, find friends, do better at school, improve relationship with mom or dad, find a career path. These are wonderful things we can do as school psychologists on a daily basis. And this is the career that definitely, um, brings meaning to life on a daily basis, on a daily basis.
Thank you, Dr. Cassie. Naomi, come on and introduce our next panelist.
Yes, so next we have Dr. Sarah Valley Gray, who is an NSU clinical psychology alumna, who's also a licensed and board certified psychologist. She is a professor and chairperson of the NSU Department of Clinical and School Psychology.
Sorry, thank you so much. That's a tough story to follow, but I think the most important thing that really resonated with me when I heard Dr. Cassie describe that interaction is that individuals who are interested in working in child mental health have this incredible opportunity to make a difference in the life of a child that you may not see immediately, but that lives on forever. And we know that really it just takes one individual who really believes in a child, and they may not be getting that at home, and they may not be getting that from their family or their extended family. But we do know, whether you're interested in working in school settings or whatever setting that you are thinking about pursuing, that you have this incredible opportunity to either from your work yourself or eliciting the help of other people in that child's world to really make a difference that will be lifelong and life-altering. So I think the thing for you to keep in mind in this presentation is, one, that it's a profession that keeps giving throughout your career. It's one that, because it has such meaning, you will find different places developmentally for you to continue to give and to find meaning and to really make a difference in the world. The biggest recommendation I have for you all is to find the goodness of fit, to find the profession that is that speaks to you and that will allow you to make that difference that you're all trying to achieve. So I look forward to hearing the other talks and helping you all through the support of our team here to figure out your path and how to make that happen.
Thank you, Dr. Valley Gray. Next, we have Dr. Cohen. Naomi, will you introduce Dr. Cohen, please?
Yes, Dr. Laura Cohen is a director of NSU School Counseling and a nationally certified counselor and school counselor. So please welcome Dr. Laura Cohen.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm so happy to be here with everybody today. I want to talk a little bit about school counseling, which is a career that goes hand in hand with school psychology. School counselors and school psychologists collaborate every day to do what's best for kids. We really do. And over the course of my career, I was able to work at all levels. So starting from pre-kindergarten all the way through graduation and now college. And so I have two little stories. One I want to talk about happened when I was working as an elementary school counselor. And a group from a motorcycle club in Davie came to me and said they wanted to help. And people in the school were a little frightened of these gentlemen who came in, but we decided that anyone who wants to help children is a good person. And so we met and we devised a plan. And I didn't do the heavy lifting, but as a school counselor, I coordinated this program. And through the efforts of this club, 350 students on free lunch all received brand new bicycles for Christmas. And these men put that together. And they didn't know how they wanted to help a school, but the efforts of this group combined with the coordination of a school counselor made that huge difference. And I'll never forget the faces of these children as they left with brand new bicycles, who in their wildest dreams, they could not have imagined a brand new bicycle, much less 350. So that was an exciting thing in my career. I was also a high school counselor. I was the district supervisor of school counseling. And then at the end of my career, a principal asked if I would please come help her with her school and serve as her assistant principal. And I thought, okay, something new, something different. I can design programs and do some of the things I've learned across the years. But, you know, part of the job of the assistant principal is discipline. And that was not something I was really prepared for. I thought to myself, well, I'm a mom, so I should be able to handle discipline. But what I found is it wasn't really working. And this one young man in particular, I will never forget. I suspended him. And he came back to school, and the next day he was back in my office for doing something else. He yelled at a teacher. And I thought, wow, this discipline thing is not going well for me. It's not making the difference that I'm used to making with kids. So I said, let me change hats. Let me sit with this young man and let me get to the bottom of what is troubling him, what is causing these outbursts. And I changed my tune and he changed his. And I asked him, what prompted this? And he said, you know, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 9 people. I woke up, all I wanted to do was have breakfast and take a shower. But somebody was in the bathroom and there was no food in the house. So what was I going to do? I came to school. I smelled like garbage. I felt like garbage. I was hungry. And the only thing I have in life is my music. And I walked into the classroom and the teacher put her hand up and said, take your headphones out. And I lost it. I couldn't hold it together and I yelled. And I didn't mean to, but I did. It was the end of a horrible morning. And we sat and we talked. And I arranged for him to come into school every day and get free breakfast that he was entitled to, but he didn't know. And I arranged to have the locker room open for him so that he could take a shower any day he wanted. And things started changing. And he became this much better version of himself, still the same person, but with support, we saw such an improvement. And I looked at this and I said, this just reinforces what I've known all along. The work of school counselors is needed, it's necessary, and it works. It changes students for the better. It gives them chances they might not have had. And I realized discipline was not my thing, but working with children is. And so I invite all of you to find your place, to be a change maker, to help students, because any of these careers, any of these fields is the right place, like Dr. Valley Gray said, when you find the right fit, the right one for you. So I do have a couple of slides to share real quickly, just because I want to make sure to touch on all the things that school counselors do every day. So I know a lot of times when we think about school counselors, we think of somebody sitting at a desk doing schedule changes. And that's just not the case anymore. That's a very old version of what school counselors were. We are such a dynamic part of every school now. So real quickly, I'm just going to go through some of these things that school counselors do. We work with parents, teachers, and administrators to advocate for each and every student. And one of the things about school counselors that make us very unique is that we work with every single student in a school, not just the students that are doing well, not just the students that are struggling. We work with everybody, 100% of the students. What else do? We provide counseling. We provide services to students experiencing trauma, poor academic performance, or any other struggles. And we do one-on-one counseling with them. We create school-wide campaigns. So we find out what the needs are in our specific schools, and then we do school-wide activities to promote kindness, substance abuse prevention, college application help, scholarship searches, developing friendships, conflict mediation, job skills, anti-bullying, whatever it is that our school needs, we get in there and we create something. What else do? We're school leaders. We are decision makers, and we cultivate that warm and inviting school culture. We provide small group counseling. So when we have a group of students experiencing similar difficulties, we do group counseling. We meet with them on a weekly basis, and we really process and help them develop the skills that they need to overcome some of their difficulties. We teach skills. We teach college and career and life readiness skills. So we get into classrooms and we really do teach. And then finally, school counselors are the voice for children who have not yet found their own, ensuring that every student is seen, valued, and heard. So if you'd like to connect with me, learn more about how to become a school counselor, here is my contact information. I'm always happy to speak with you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cohen. Next, we're going to be introducing a recent alum. Naomi, will you join me in introducing Dr. Kotzer?
So Dr. Gabriella Kotzer is a recent NSU clinical psychology graduate who is currently a postdoctoral fellow based in Westchester, New York. Dr. Kotzer has extensive clinical training across schools, pediatric nursing facilities, community mental health, foster care, and residential treatment centers. So please welcome Dr. Gabriella Kotzer.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm just going to tell a quick story that's ongoing currently. So at my postdoc, I've been working with this girl who had previously worked with other clinicians and recently underwent an evaluation and was diagnosed with ADHD. And when we started working together, she really didn't understand what the diagnosis was. She just knew she was given this thing and told it explained a lot of things that were going on for her. But she didn't really understand what any of it meant. So while we were building rapport, I took a lot of time to get to know her, give her an appropriate explanation of what ADHD was, what superpowers it gave her, what things that might make it a little bit more challenging to deal with daily, why she can hold it together in school, but sometimes at home it just all fell apart. And through that explanation and telling her that it's not just a her thing, it's a kid thing, it's an adult thing, that it's something that she's going to have to cope with for her life, but also it's something that gives her a unique way to interact with the world and interact with herself and others. She was really able to understand herself more and understand that some of the things that were happening were just not her fault. And in that short time, when we were able to really get in there and explain to her like what is going on with her, she was able to give herself like a lot more grace and give herself permission to just start working on the things that everyone was telling her she needed to work on. And it was, all those things that she had learned with previous therapists, like coping skills and breathing and identifying emotions. They were all things she had learned, but she didn't really understand why she needed to apply them. She finally gave herself permission to really explore what all of that really entailed and what that meant and what it would help her with. And even just giving herself that permission and giving herself a space to explore what ADHD was really allowed her to start using the things she was learning and asking questions and breaking down the situations. And in a short time, I was already able to see just a quick change in her self-esteem. And that really made all the difference. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I've been able to see is just by taking time to explore and explain to kids um, what's, going on with them that maybe they weren't able to identify before, but they knew something wasn't right with themselves or something that they were challenged with at the moment. Just giving them that space gave them a little bit of room to have grace for themselves and have some self-esteem improvement. And that's been really, really nice to see.
Thank you so much, Gabby. And next we have Kate. Naomi, will you introduce Kate?
Mhm. So Kate will soon be an NSU school psychology doctoral alumna and has completed practica at Nicholas Children's Hospital and Broward Health. She's currently completing her internship at Renfrew Center. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you, Naomi. For me, I think I really enjoyed this career path that I've chosen because I think having the background of knowing that schools, academic stressors, peer interactions play such a big role in our little, people's lives. And having worked in like higher levels of care, like hospitals and residential care, I've really been able to kind of help bridge the gap between clinical care and schools accommodations that children and families are entitled to get, but they're just not aware of it. So a lot of the times, we're able to sit down with our patients and families and let them know how to ask for resources within the schools, what they're entitled to, how can we make the hard things that they have to deal with a little bit easier. So I think that has been so, so rewarding having like a background in schools and the functionings of schools while working in like clinical settings, and that has just been so incredibly rewarding.
Thank you, Kate. And I really want to start off with one of my favorite questions to ask, and for any of our panelists, and the Q&A is now open for our guests. Tell me a little bit about your aha moment that just became exactly when you knew this was your career path. Any of our panelists?
I can start. I don't know if I had an aha moment, but I can tell you I started career blindly, to be honest with you. I was working as a school teacher, just, dealing with what teachers deal with, building how to build an effective classroom, how to deliver effective instruction, managing behaviors, trying to address the needs of all the kids from, where they are academically, maybe at different ends of the spectrum to where they were emotionally and behaviorally. Some sat still and listened, and others, I didn't have the skills to help them. And so I kind of stumbled upon this career when um, I don't want to spend too much time, but I kind of learned about this career accidentally. I was researching how to help my kids, and I got to meet some school psychologists, and through them, this career opened to me. So maybe that was a aha moment, just knowing that this exists and that I can kind of combine my educational experience in the classroom and learn new skills to be able to help the teachers, to help the parents, and help the kids. And honestly, looking back at now, about over 15 years past graduation, I never regretted a day that I chose this career. I always say I didn't choose school psychology, it chose me. And there has been hard days. It's not all, rainbows and unicorns. There are days when you struggle with the clients. There are days when you really don't know how to help sometimes or have limited resources or opportunities, whatever challenges you may have, but not a day in my 15 years working as a school psychologist I ever regretted that this career chose me.
Thank you, Dr. Cassie. Lily, do you have any other questions or anyone else want to join? I'm sorry.
I was
I
going to
have a
Dr.
say,
Cohen.
yeah.
whoops, I started out as a high school teacher. So I was a teacher as well. And I taught Spanish. And I thought to myself, I don't want my students to remember me because I was great at conjugating verbs, and I was really good at verbs. But when I had real interactions with my students, that's when I felt at my best. And that's what I wanted my students to remember me for. And so that's why I decided to go into school counseling, because I wanted to have more of those interactions with students where I could feel like I was making that difference.
Did you say Spanish
I did.
teacher? So tengo que practicar mi español con usted. Wow, qué bien.
I might have to correct you.
Was I Dr. Cohen, you touched on the role of a school counselor, but I know that in today's panel we have a mix of school counselor and school psychology, and then um, even wondering what the difference would really look like between a school counselor who kind of acts as that voice in the school setting and creates those school-wide, campus-wide campaigns. What would be the day-to-day difference between the school counselor and the school psychologist? And maybe how does that even differ from a social worker or a psychiatrist?
Okay. Well, a school counselor, like we said, works with every single student in the school, where a school psychologist is more likely going to work with the students at either end, either those students who are struggling or the students who are excelling and need some additional support and help in that area. But the nice thing is we work together so that, we're all in this for the exact same reason, to help students. The way we do it is very different, but we're all there to make sure students are successful.
Yeah, if I may jump in, I agree with Dr. Cohen. One of my best friends when I used to work in public school system was the school psychologist, who truly work on many cases with many children, with many families together, whether it's helping assess kid in crisis or support kid in crisis. Sometimes even as maybe simple as calling the local psychiatrist in the area and seeing if they take this family's insurance to get the medical help for this kid. There are lots we sat in meetings together, we planned interventions together, we discuss resources together, and Dr. Cohen, till this day, we talk a lot. Across the department. So there's definitely a lot of overlap. I can speak a little bit about school psychology, and I don't know if there's a typical day for a school psychologist because our training is so diverse. From the functions that we perform, anywhere from assessment. A lot of people, when they think of school psychology, they think of assessment, right? Assessing for learning disabilities, maybe attention deficit, maybe emotional behavioral disorders. And that's true. School psychologists these days, in many districts, spend a lot of time conducting the evaluations that later on help kids get more formalized supports within the district. But it's certainly not the only thing that we do, and certainly not the only thing that we can do. As school psychologists, we're trained to support all kids in the system, from whether it's a classroom-wide support, it's a teacher support, it's a parent support. As school counselors, we can walk into the classroom and provide social skills training to the kids, or provide training for the teachers, how to manage the classroom, you name it. We really have a very diverse skill set. Crisis response, we're often involved in the crisis response, whether it's a student in a crisis, the whole school in a crisis. We provide direct interventions, direct support, usually in mental health, even though we're trained to do academic interventions as well. And it's really how different schools decide to use school psychologists. There's a critical shortage of school psychologists in the nation. There's not enough of us. There's definitely need to have more school psychologists. There's just not enough of us. So that's why many of school psychologists sort of prioritize for the task that maybe other professions cannot do in a school, such as doing evaluations. But if you look around in the school districts, I'm happy to see that there is definitely expansion of services that school psychologists provide. And you can really find, if you look well, you can find a school that will match your interests and your strengths as a clinician. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that paints a pretty clear difference between two career paths that have a lot of overlap. We have another question in the chat asking, what's something that you could tell your younger self as you were kind of preparing for this professional career in counseling and or psychology?
I think I'm going to take that one, if you don't mind. Yeah, I think sometimes people feel a lot of pressure from others, and it's hard to really look inwardly and find out what it is that you are trying, like what brings you meaning. And so it's so important to listen internally and to do things like what all of you are doing right now, to participate in informational sessions, to talk to people in the professions that you're interested in, to shadow people, but to find out really what will be the best path for you. I think it's so easy to sort of do what you think you're supposed to do, as opposed to what feels like something that drives you internally. And I don't think we do a great job broadly of helping young people know what their strengths are and what opportunities are available. And so I think it's so important to talk to people, to job shadow, and even to take like vocational inventories that help you to really be more aware of and in tune to who you are. I like similar to what other people said, I think I had experiences that led me to other experiences, but it wasn't a clear path. And that might be a good thing or might not be a good thing. But I think getting as much information as possible would be something, if I could tell my younger self, that would really make things a little bit more direct.
As Lily is pulling up the next question, I was going to note there's some folks that come in from different backgrounds, and in particular, someone talking about having a business background. And many of the programs that we offer here and different schools don't require prerequisites for graduate studies. Dr. Cohen, do you require prerequisites? Can
We
someone
do
come in
not.
with a business degree or business experience? And what makes somebody a good counselor or psychologist?
Really, communication is the key. Communication, empathy, and just the desire to be a change maker.
So people with good social intelligence, emotional intelligence, good skills, they like to work with people.
I would say so. And, even as a business professional, there are so many opportunities right now for mentors. If someone wanted to have experiences helping others to see if this is a good fit, there are programs within each school district where you can mentor a student or work within a school to see how that feels before delving into the career. We need good mentors.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you said about having a certain set of skills before you dive into a career, we have another question that asks, what what are some of the practical ways that our programs train students to recognize and address intersectionality of identities when providing services to at-risk populations?
That is something that we teach throughout the curriculum, but we really address it through our practicum and internship. So when our students in school counseling are in schools working directly with students, we have supervision. Once a week, those students meet in a small group with a college professor and we discuss cases. And we really conceptualize each case that the student is working with to make sure that they are seeing and addressing all of the identities, backgrounds, barriers, strengths that each student brings to the table.
And if
I
I
think
can
it really comes through supervision.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback, kind of sort of combining the previous question and this one, in this career, we do work with individuals that come from all walks of life. When you work in public school, you don't get to choose who you need to help. There's a kid in front of you, and you need to have skills and cultural humility, and sensitivity to their aspects of their identity, and in order to help them. And so I think as you reflecting whether these careers are a good choice for you, think about also what's your attitudes, and how do you think through cultural competence or cultural humility. How do you think about individuals with different identities? How much do you know? How much are you willing to learn about their life stories and what makes them who they are? And it's again, you have to be comfortable in a space where you work with individuals that may be very, very different from you. Otherwise, this career might be tough.
Thank you both. Sorry, I was muted there. Well, we still have some time left, so we've got more questions coming in. Another one asks, is there a way to branch off into starting a private practice for psychoeducational testing as a licensed school psychologist? Maybe how limited or not limited are we to working in a school with this degree?
Where is Gene Cash when we need him? But yes, it's a great question, and something we haven't discussed yet is the training in school psychology has two levels. So the minimum degree that you have to have in order to enter the field of school psychology is specialist degree in the state of Florida. With that degree, you can be certified to work in a school system. That happens through the Department of Education in Florida. You can also be licensed as a school psychologist in the state of Florida. So after completing your training in a specialist program, you have to have 3 years of supervised experience before you can apply for a licensure as a licensed school psychologist. That gives you opportunities to work in settings outside of school, such as private practice, to do psychological evaluations, or contract with school in order to provide supports to school districts that may not potentially have enough school psychologists. So you can go in and as a independent agency provide evaluations for the schools. Now, if you want to broaden the skills and competencies and the scope of the services that you can provide, doctoral degree then is the next step. When you complete doctorate program, then you're eligible to be a licensed psychologist, same licensure that our clinical doctoral students get at the completion of their training. And that license opens up a lot more doors to really, and really gives you a lot more training to be competent and confident to practice independently outside of the school system.
Lily, before you ask that answer or pull another question, I want to ask some of our recent grads. And Kate, you're almost there, right? What do you have? A couple weeks left? Very nice. It's exciting to see. Can you tell us about something that one of the skills that you learned that really impacted you? Kate, Gabby, what did you learn in the program that you're using today?
Well, I like for me, I think our program is kind of unique in a way because we are combined with like the College of Psychology. So I do think we get a lot of in-depth like clinical skills, clinical knowledge, especially in looking at conceptualizing cases, taking a diversity lens, like Dr. Kasi had mentioned earlier. Just seeing the child or the patient as a whole, as opposed to a diagnosis or a symptom, just looking at the full background, looking at all the possible areas that a child could be impacted. I feel like we've kind of honed that in through the program. I feel like I utilize that all the time with my patients, which is something that they talk about quite often. So I think that's something that I've learned that I really love.
Nice.
Thank you.
I think something that I've definitely taken with me is being open. Like Kate was saying, the fact that we have clinical and school in the same building and sometimes in the same classes, um, it's a lot of different perspectives. And what I started going into the doctoral program thinking I was going to do versus what I came out doing, very different. And if I wasn't open to exploring other things and looking for mentorship outside of the designated path, I don't think I would have found the path I'm currently on, um, or been the clinician I am today without that openness.
Lily, do we have any more questions?
We do. Thank you both. I really like how you both kind of touched on that holistic view that you try to keep when you're looking at a person, much more than just a diagnosis. Um, Another question that we do have from the chat is for those who have utilized CBT or cognitive behavior therapy in clinical settings, what have you found to be its greatest strengths, and what challenges or limitations should emerging clinicians be aware of?
I can go ahead. I think what's sometimes really, really great, and also the double-edged sword challenge of CBT, is that it is really structured. Um, the great thing is when a kiddo needs structure and really likes that formulaic way of looking at things and tackling things in life, it's great. But at the same time, some kids aren't built that way. Um, and don't want skills. They just want you to listen and validate for that moment. Um, so in that way, like CBT is great, and to use it as a framework, it is really helpful. But be open to things past CBT because it's not a one size fits all situation 99% of the time.
Great.
Lily, any more questions over there?
It looks like that's all of the questions that we have in the chat so far. If anybody has any more questions that they would like to drop into the chat quickly.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask about, because so I've been at NSU over 20 years, and I have a number of students that have worked for me. Naomi works with me, and Kate, I had the pleasure of working with you for 4 years. One of the things that I've found, especially with I don't have anybody here from clinical mental health, but we do have counseling. I get a lot of my students are getting hired before they ever really finish, and so many go on to internships. What areas are really has a great career path, critical shortage? Who's got the biggest shortages in child mental health?
I don't know that I can say we have the biggest shortage, but I will tell you this. I get calls from principals pretty much every day saying, do you have somebody for me? Can you send me somebody? Do you have a recent grad? We even have interns being hired and paid. I mean, I can't promise that because it doesn't happen every single day, but there is a demand. And principals know that when a school counselor comes from NSU, they are ready, as soon as they walk through the door, they're ready to take on the entire role and just dive right in. So there is certainly a demand for school counselors statewide.
What does the demand for school psychology look like across international borders if it's such high demand state to state?
So it's a
That's
really good question, and it's hard to say because school psychology looks very differently in different countries. What we think of school psychologists in the U.S. is not necessarily how other countries conceptualize school psychologists or assign the roles that we assign here. One good things to learn about international school psychology, there's an international organization called International School Psychology Association, ISPA. Every year they hold a conference, usually in Europe, one of the countries in Europe, and if I'm not mistaken, it's either like late spring, early summer. And so if you go to their website, you can learn a little bit more about their activity and more about school psychology in the world. What I have to add from kind of my perspective, I've recently been getting more um, emails about um, uh, um, military bases, U.S. military bases, looking for school psychologists across the world. So our training and the certification or licensure that you get here in the U.S. is what's needed to be able to work abroad, but you'll work to support military families that are deployed all over the world. And one way to look for those positions is go to the Department of Defense educational activity, I think it's DODEA. They often advertise positions for school psychologists in the countries abroad, and the training that we provide here is the one that matches the requirements.
I've actually run into some individuals that do that with the bases, and there's a shortage of people that are qualified. So a great point. So panelists, as we're wrapping up our questions, is there any final words? We'll just start with Dr. Cassie. Words of encouragement.
Words of encouragement. Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot. I think know yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses, seek mentorship and work hard, to be honest with you. I think that's another thing. Um, what we do, we're responsible for a lot as school counselors, school psychologists, clinical psychologists. We often participate in very high stake decisions for kids. That carries a lot of responsibility. And so the training to become one is really rigorous and it's time intensive, and you gotta be passionate. You gotta love what you do, and you gotta give it time to develop skills and most importantly, confidence to go out in the world and do the good things.
Dr. Cohen.
I think Dr. Cassie covered it all for both of us, but if you feel that passion and you feel that you want to leave the world slightly better than the way you found it, this is the place. This is where you make change. When you work with young people and you actually witness not your own aha moments, but their aha moments, you really start to see things changing right before your eyes, and that feeling of just leaving work, never knowing what tomorrow is going to bring because your day is so different every single day. But knowing that when you left work every day, you might have made it just that much easier for a child who needed you, to me, is all of the fulfillment I need.
Dr. Valley Gray.
Yeah, I think as Doctors Cassie and Cohen had shared, any of the careers that we've presented today really are change makers, and that was the title of this get together today. And each of you, as you're listening to everyone's description of their positions and what they've done and the impact they've had, just let it sit within you and ask questions and reach out to our people here who are available and ready to help guide you around what would be the best fit for you. So I wish you all the best. It's a very exciting time in your life, and finding your life's work, it's one of the most important things that you can do. So good luck.
Dr. Cutzler?
Pretty much what everybody else said, but as you're at the beginning of figuring out what you want to do higher education wise, just be open, be active, ask questions, seek out mentorship. Mentorship, I think, was the biggest difference for how I got to where I am.
My friend Kate.
I mean, I definitely echo what everybody else said. I would also add, like, when you're thinking about your careers, like it's important to think about like, can I make an impact? Where do I see myself? Can I make a living doing what I love? Like I know I definitely asked all those questions when I first, started the program. Know that there is such a high demand for this field. I just finished doing all of my postdoctoral interviews, and seems to be a massive wait list of clinicians they're looking for just to get through like evaluations. From private practices to clinics to schools, there seem to be a high need of us everywhere. So that's really not, I feel like that shouldn't really be a concern. It really is a very rewarding career choice. And I encourage you guys to just look into it, do the info.
Naomi.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what everyone's been saying, this is a really challenging but also really rewarding field to be in. And I can't emphasize that enough as someone who's currently going through the process. So just really, know your why, understand why you're, pursuing this field to begin with, and kind of use that as motivation to really push you through. Because again, it's going to be challenging. You're going to go through ups and downs, but have that solid support circle around you, and know why you're here, and you'll be fine.
Thank you, Naomi. And thank you for co-hosting. Lily, you've been chatting with people privately and you've been on. Any other thoughts as we close up?
Yes. I mean, thank you to all of our participants for your attention and your really engaging questions. I think we were able to foster some really thoughtful conversation through all of those. Okay, great. Well, if anything crops up, tonight or tomorrow, then feel free to direct any further questions to gradschool@nova.edu. I am an admissions counselor, so any folks who are interested in seeking more information about the programs and beginning your applications, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at that same address. We look forward to seeing your applications.
Again, thank you all for joining us, and keep in touch.